Hangtime podcast. It is your host, Leon McFarlane, and my co-host,
Ricky Pang.
And here we are refining the connection series. We are on the refining the connection series again. This time round, work-life balance 2.0. So one may be thinking, haven't you done this? Haven't we seen this episode before? And why is it being done again? And I think that to answer that, it's more to think of, okay, we've got 1 year extra in our respective careers. And in terms of the actual work-life balance and what we know and how to balance stress, now it's time to always just check in and just really go back with the nuggets of information that we have picked up along the way. 1 more year of wisdom. So let's jump straight into it. So Rix, in terms of work-life balance, the meaning, what is the meaning of it?
Yeah, I mean, there's no kind of fancy scientific term or, nothing to abstract about it. It's simply put, it's just the amount of time you spend doing your work or on your job versus the amount of time you spend doing what's important to you outside of work. Now, whether that be hanging out with loved ones, family, friends, or pursuing your personal interests and hobbies. And that's basically it at the core in terms of work-life balance.
Mm-hmm. So is a balance, and I'll just ask this question being just out there as it is. So, okay, when we talk about work-life balance, what exactly is the balance and can an imbalance happen?
Absolutely. And I was actually, part of the inspiration, again, for revisiting this episode came from Jay Shetty, which, both of us are a big, big believer of, and listen to his stuff and read his material quite a lot. And if the audience doesn't know who Jay Shetty is, we recommend to check him out. But I was listening to one of his podcasts the other day about work-life balance and how that can be, how that can come about, what are the causes, what it could lead to, how you can improve it. And one of the things which really stood out to me was that at the kind of root cause of work-life imbalance, it's due to the amount of stress or anxiety you feel at work.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that stress and anxiety levels is due to the fact that work becomes much more harder and more stressful when you're not learning or growing at work, right? And it's really important to kind of be able to identify the gaps you have in your knowledge or skills to meet or target a goal at work. And let's be honest, everyone at work, no one's perfect. No one knows everything. No one knows how to do everything when it comes to their roles and responsibilities, right? But being able to kind of be self-aware of that, seeing where your weaknesses and vulnerabilities are, and then using that as a spark to learn, grow, and develop new skills would help you kind of meet your work goals and targets, which in a way would also lead you to reducing your stress levels at work, becoming less anxious, and becoming more productive, and really being more functioning at an optimum level.
Yeah, I guess more mindful, right?
One of the things that Jay Shetty also mentioned, exactly. And one of the things he mentioned, again, which was really quite insightful, I don't know, Leon, if you heard of this concept called eudaimonia happiness.
No, but it sounds like a Greek term.
Yeah, exactly. And it's actually derived from the word eudaimonia, which is actually a Greek word translated to good spirit or happiness. And really the concept behind that is we derive happiness from optimal functioning or reaching our potential, and really finding that joy you get when you finish something or you complete a deadline or task at work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, especially in today's society, we've kind of actually forgotten what that feels like. And we just, in a way, tend to think of work as, it's something I just need to get done, or it's just get out the way, or you find yourself procrastinating to avoid a challenge because you think it's going to become really hard, or kind of to avoid that stress at work. And the old saying is, you're basically kicking the can down the road, right? It's still going to be there, but you're just delaying it as much as you can. But that's the wrong thing to look at it, and kind of most of our well-being actually comes from being able to accomplish things at work. You know, get your task done, tick it off your list, and also that sense of being valued and validated and having an impact at work can also directly affect your well-being.
Yeah, that sounds like you're referring
Kind
back
of the
to
more
the
you
episode we
avoid
had
or
before, right?
procrastinate,
Because it's essentially going back, it's the gratitude.
exactly,
But it works as a
exactly.
good feedback loop when it comes to that work-life balance. But yeah, please explain more, sir. Explain more.
Yeah. So, ooh, that's the first time in a long time someone's called me that. But anyway, and kind of like the more you avoid or procrastinate, or you're just literally kicking the can down the road, or you're just standing still and being stagnant and not asking from help from your managers or colleagues, or even not carry out self-learning. You know, why not take some responsibility for yourself and um, help plug in the gaps and challenges that you plug out, no, sorry, fill in the kind of the lack of skill set, the lack of knowledge that you have. And you know, I'm a big believer in self-learning. You're a big believer in self-learning
Of
as
course.
well, in that regard. But the more you tend to avoid these things, the more hours and energies you find yourself wasting and spending on at work. And before you know it, that will cause you not only more stress and more anxiety, but it would actually eat into the hours you spend on your personal life, right? Because you find yourself, okay, shit, you know, today has not been a very productive task. You know, I didn't know what to do, or I was slow in asking for help. This means I have to stay extra behind, you know, after work and work on it a few more hours where, you know, I could be spending time with my family or chilling out and de-stressing as well. And that could really cause a great imbalance in that regard.
Yeah, so essentially it's not having a boundary, right? It's not having a boundary with your personal life and your actual life at work. And if we split our work, if we split our day into three, right? We spend, okay, not all of us sleep 8 hours, but let's just go with the recommended time that we should be sleeping. 8 hours sleep. We also spend 8 hours at work,
Yeah.
in theory. So that eight
Yeah.
hours for you to be an individual, to live your life, to spend that time with family, loved ones, or even friends, if you start to eat into that final third, your balance is completely off. But then obviously not everyone's work-life balance looks the same. Because obviously it depends on where you are in terms of the hierarchy, how much risk is involved when it comes to work, what is your responsibilities. So many different ways, but yet again here, the main idea when it comes to Purpose Hangtime is just focus on making sure we get that balance right, or at least unveil how to get that balance, what resources are out there.
Exactly. And it's also important to kind of note that a lack of balance in your work life can actually lead to burnout. And, you know, as we normally like to do in true Purpose Hangtime fashion and style, is we like to throw some stats people. But these stats, looking at them, they're quite frightening, actually. And, I'm just going to, you know, reel them off. So apparently 91% of adults in the UK experience high or extreme levels of pressure and stress over the past year. 1 in 5 workers actually needed to take time off work due to poor mental health caused by pressure or stress within the past year as well. And 63% of employees who often experience burnout at work are more likely to take a sick day. And that's, I don't know what you feel, Leon, but just hearing those stats, I mean, it's quite frightening. And, you know, it just shows you how work-life balance is very, very important.
Yeah, but it shows that we have an issue in society where it's that constant carousel of keeping up with the Joneses, that constant work, 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 work. We celebrate with accolades those who have done more work than others. Whether that is dependent on quality over quantity, that's dependent on the company. And it's not representative of our companies. But there is big celebrations when it comes to, oh, this person stayed until 10 p.m. to finish off that PowerPoint slide. But why are we
Mm.
celebrating this? Are we celebrating it because it's actually beneficial for the company, or are we celebrating it because it's good for one's mental health? Because I don't think that doing that is good for one's mental health. And do they get a time in lieu when that
Mm.
happens? This is the thing. So Western society is so focused on let me do the best, bigger, better, faster. But ultimately, that is not beneficial for our mental health if it's not balanced in the correct way. So those are my thoughts in terms of that.
Exactly,
And those
exactly. And
stats are
funny you
quite
mentioned like
frightening, very, very frightening. We got a crisis going on here when it comes to stress.
mm, exactly. And funny how you mentioned about Western society. I think this is probably even more prevalent in Asian society, in that,
Mm.
especially in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
I actually was reading the other day. I'm not sure if you've heard this term. It's called karoshi, and
No.
it's actually a term in Japanese, which basically looks at death by overworking in the Japanese workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually have official stats on that as well. And just by
Mm-hmm.
reading about it in general and just looking, do more research into it, is actually quite frightening as well. How, especially in Asian society, how work is kind of seen in some regards as the majority. That's the way you spend the majority of your day. This is what you
Mm-hmm.
should focus on above all else. So yeah, it's actually quite scary in that regard. And other studies as well. There was a professor, Mariana Vetani, who specializes in mental health, work capacity, and kind of sickness absence research. Um, of all the numerous researches she's done, she found
Mm-hmm.
that having a improper work-life balance can lead to all sorts of health problems, which include sleep impairment, depression, alcoholism, diabetes,
Mm-hmm.
foggy memory or impaired memory, and heart disease as well. Now, of course, these are very, very serious symptoms and conditions, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we kind of it needs to be talked about more.
Yep.
But if we're also going to take more of a kind of corporate view, just looking through the lens of the employer, it's also terrible for them as well.
Yes.
Uh, because imagine if you have employees that are constantly, sick or absent from work, that could eat into your productivity, your profitability, and also the fact that you also have to deal with rising health insurance costs there as well. So
Yep.
not only is an improper work-life balance bad for the employee, it's also going to be bad for the employer as well.
Yeah, so that means that there needs to be certain platforms or resources put out there to make sure that we do not have an overworked staff or workforce because yeah, that knock-on effect could be the difference between a company being profitable or a company just not meeting those deadlines or whatever the actual project goals that are necessary, which it is also important. But yeah, the value
Mm.
and the mindfulness of the individual and of staff members is so important when it comes to that the triangle of hierarchy when it comes to corporate life that we both very well know about, especially now after your time in Denmark and my
Oh yeah.
time in industrial science. Yeah, 1 year can definitely change the lens on everything.
Mm.
And you've seen two different cultures when it comes to working. So just to kind of segue a slight bit, your
Mm.
experiences when it comes to like what have you seen what's the working like in Denmark versus UK?
I would say the working life here in Denmark, compared to the UK, I say it's more well balanced here. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and here, it's all very family heavy, family orientated and stuff. And
Mm.
those kind of values seep into kind of the working hours you get here. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
most people here on a Friday finish relatively early, even during some weekdays as well, where the some employees would have to go up. and pick up their kids as well. So they normally leave around 3:30 and stuff. And here it's not frowned upon or judged upon compared to the UK, where if you were to kind of leave early, then in a way you're kind of going to be judged by your colleagues, your peers, and your managers there as well. But here it's a fairly more relaxed, and I think this is one of the reasons why I also moved here as well, to kind of refocus my own personal work-life balance as well, because as you know, over the past few years in the UK, I've worked out of hours, long hours, and especially there was one incident where you and another good friend of ours, came to visit
do our
me,
intervention
where I was working, and we had that kind of we still got an intervention to this day. So I think it's
Yeah. So with the differences, that means just moving along in terms of what we want to discuss today. So that means, culture differences. It's great to hear that Denmark has got a more mindful focus when it comes to work-life balance. Kind of whenever you do mention, oh yeah, we finished at 3 p.m. on a Friday and we got beers, and I'm like, that doesn't happen over here. But yeah, again, it's different industries, but it is definitely good to see that there is some sort of balance. Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. But at the end of the day, as long as the job and the work has been done for the week, that's the main thing. It's the quality of the work rather than the quantity. So on that topic, quality over quantity, and talking about culture, in UK, it seems that there may likely be more signs of someone burning out when it comes to working such long hours and keeping really, really focused on the task in hand without actually being mindful. So for the audience, we want to focus on what are the signs of someone struggling with burnout. Now, fortunately for me, I am a part of the mental health committee of my company. And with that, I am an actual qualified mental health first aider. So I've been given the role of looking out for what does burnout look like within our workforce. And essentially it can come down to 5 specific points: consistently working long hours and skipping lunch and dinner. So when you do see that person staying behind after hours, now I do it, but my reason is to go to the gym. So that's for mindful purposes. But when you see that person staying behind, working on that presentation, working on Excel, just not going home because they are really anxious about getting the job done, that is a sign of someone really, really struggling and could possibly lead to burnout. So this is what we need to look out for when it comes to our staff, our colleagues. It doesn't matter where you are in terms of the working ladder. It's important to make sure that we don't have people consistently doing this. There is life away from work, and at work you can be replaced. So, it's important to have that balance. Decrease productivity and focus and struggling to work at your best.
Yeah, and
Yeah, go on, jump in.
And just going back to your previous point there, where you said, you can be replaced. You got to think of yourself, and it's a very kind of cynical way of looking at it, as like a cog in the wheel, right?
Yes. I wouldn't say it's cynical. It's the truth.
As soon
You're
as
part of the machine.
that cog is no longer in... Well, yeah, I mean, as soon as you, the cog, is no longer functioning or performing, it's just a simple case of them taking out the cog and replacing you with a brand new one, right? So, in a way, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I've come to a stage where I've realized that you should never kill yourself or for any company, right? No matter how much you like your colleagues, your work, your managers, or you believe in the company values or ethos. At the end of the day, you should always look out for yourself, and you should always be number one in that regard. So,
then a good company will at least have parameters in place to make sure that you do not overwork as well, and to make sure that you're not putting yourself out. Because at the end of the day, it is a transaction of time for money, right? The company wants your time to help them with their goals, and then in that exchange, you're getting money. So don't break yourself to give them more of your time because you're not being paid anymore in most circumstances anyway. Well, in our industries. So there you go. So in terms of the next point, chronic fatigue, are you seeing a colleague who's just chronically tired all the time. They're falling asleep. They disappear into the sanctuary room and sleeping on beanbags, or they literally just disappear from the office for 2 hours. You're like, okay, where's Johnny gone? You know, like just going with a typical name that's just out there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not good in terms of that. And then neglecting personal life, missing out on personal commitments, having bosses missing their, let's say, their child's birthday party. That is a sign of there's an imbalance of what comes first, what is correct, what is right. And then job dissatisfaction, losing enthusiasm, just not really being aligned with the company's goals. And I think it's so important, those 5 things. If you do see someone struggling, and you do see someone, or you see a combination, or even just one, to just kind of keep an eye and keep a check out. So I'm going to rattle through those very, very quickly again. Consistently working long hours, decreased productivity and focus, chronic fatigue, neglecting personal life, and job dissatisfaction, which are the classic signs of burnout. And one of the other reasons why we decided to go ahead with this episode is because, also with me being on the mental health committee, we've started up a newsletter within the startup that I work at. And what was so great to see is when we interviewed a few individuals, especially those higher up the food chain, they specifically pointed out that family comes first, and they make sure that they carve in time, or they book in time, to make sure that family, friends, and personal commitments are at least put there. They come first, despite having such a crazy schedule, whether that is flying to Boston, whether that is flying to make sure that investors, we get them on the books. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's to make sure that people or your children will always remember whether you were there or not. And these are very, very important moments that that don't come back. And essentially, a job is replaceable. A job can be substituted with something else, but it's important to just make sure you have those moments with your loved ones. So yeah, so on that topic, I think it's time, in true purpose Hangtime fashion, we go in with those personal experiences of when it has come to good work-life balance or poor work-life balance. Because yet again, 1 year in industry, well, actually no, probably more like a year and 3 months, but I've seen the ebb and flow of working as an industrial scientist is very, very different to being in academia. And then yourself, Rix, you've obviously been head of sales. You've got this new role now, which obviously is still fresh, but obviously you know what the ebb and flow cycle is, and obviously you've got some historical points when it comes to work-life balance. So yeah, go ahead with your experience first, and then I will jump in.
I mean, I think to kind of make it easier to follow, I'm going to talk about my time working in the UK and my time working in Denmark here. And during my time working in UK, my old company, which, still holds a fun place in my heart, I have many great friends there, some really great people there as well. But yeah, there were times there where, going back to the whole intervention story, there was one instance where we were set to record an episode of this podcast, right? And what did I say? What were my exact words to you? I said, no, I'm too busy, trying to close this deal, or
yes. So you were having a conversation with myself and our close high esteemed friend, who we'll just call R. And you're talking to both of us at the same time. You said to him that you were getting ready to record a podcast episode with me, and I think 10 minutes later you said to me, you don't have time, or that you're just not in the mental space. That was the exact quote, to record an episode. And I was thinking, hold on, we're not just talking to this guy literally half an hour and he said everything is fine. So what is going on? So jump in, finish.
And then But that's the thing with sales, right? It's always ever moving. There's always moving parts to it, and 5 minutes before you could be everything's fine and dandy. 5 minutes later, you'd be like, okay, something's just come up, and so with that particular incident on that particular day, yeah, I just felt, damn, I need to stay behind and
Mm,
catch up on this work or make sure that this still gets over the line, right?
mhm,
And it came to a point where I just mentally and emotionally and physically, I felt like I just didn't have enough time to dedicate to the other personal aspects of my life, which in this case
mm,
would have been recording podcasts. But I still remember distinctly, you guys were like, screw it, we're coming to your office after work, we're going to have a sit down, we're going to have a chat, we're going to have an intervention. And, once again, it was a big wake up call to
yeah.
me when you guys explained, look, I don't know why you're killing yourself over work. There should be other um, aspects outside of work you should enjoy and try to balance that out as well.
Mm,
And I mean, it, at that time, I don't think I ever took a proper holiday in a good couple of years as well.
yeah. And
So
audience, that's something
again,
that we're
being
working
being in
on
that
when it comes to
space,
him.
it's difficult. Well, I mean, I might be going to Greece with someone in the summer. I'm not going to name who that someone is, but my close friends would probably guess who that is if someone that's recently entered my life. But anyway, it's just being in that space and that feeling. It wasn't a good place to be in. Absolutely not a
Mm.
good place to be in.
And it seemed like you
But
didn't know how to switch off as well.
with that being said, I didn't know how to switch off exactly. And if it wasn't for you guys at least making me aware of what my problems and issues were,
Mm,
then I think I'd probably still be, in a way, a workaholic or, still stressed out, chronically
mhm,
fatigued, always tired, just not
mm,
not focused enough. But all that being said, that's kind of the
mhm,
UK experience. Since moving
mm,
over to Copenhagen and Denmark, I felt more, in a way, I felt more kind of relaxed and less stressed. And kind of the reason why, as I mentioned before, it's just to do with the whole culture mentality of Denmark as a whole. And what
mhm.
I really like about it is, yes, they're very hardworking, but they also place emphasis on family as well, and also their own kind of personal, physical, mental well-being,
Yeah.
and just being able to kind of have that ingrained into society already, and
Mm,
that kind of spreads around the whole company. It's great. Like I said, some Fridays now I don't do this every single Friday. It doesn't happen every single Friday, but sometimes we finish early, have a beer, or we talk to our colleagues, and then get ready for the weekend as well. And another important aspect, where I feel I have a better work-life balance here as well, is
mhm,
to also do with the trust of my manager,
mm,
um, who has been absolutely great. My
mhm.
new manager in my new role,
Amazing.
he's been very supportive. Um, Always has time to listen to any ideas I have, but he also says, like, Ricky, I don't care how many hours you spend on a deal. You know, even if you spend like 2, 3 hours or just an hour on a deal a day, as long as you
Mhm,
bring that in, that's it. So
mm,
he just cares about the results. It doesn't care about,
mm.
yeah, you have to work like right on the clock. You can only leave at like 5, or you have to stay behind at 6 or 7 p.m. As long as you do the job and do what you need to do, then I'm fine with how many hours you spend. And that's, for me, that's quite liberating in a sense, and really quite motivating personally for me.
Mm. No, that definitely sounds great, mate. My question for you is, how much, okay, when it comes to you now having a good balance with work life, how much of that moving away from the UK to Denmark do you think is attributed to you just having a fresh start?
I
I
think that
know,
played a
short
big part
question.
as
Yeah,
well.
a very short question.
Because I
Normally I ask
think
really long questions, but that was short.
Yeah. I think that played a big part, and it's
Mm,
just kind of that mental separation you get, right?
hmm.
Um, this is the UK. This was my past life, fresh start, new beginnings. Moving over here, and that definitely played a big part as well. And just in a way, being around kind of that whole um, culture, the society of having that more of a well-structured work-life balance. In a way, what's that term? I'm trying to think of a scientific term. Where is it? Osmosis, where you actually seep it in by being around something,
It could
or I
be
don't know. I mean,
osmosis
I'm
or
not the
dif-
most
or
scientific guy,
or
but
diffusion. It could be either. But yeah, I get what you mean. You passively, instead of
yeah,
actively having to seek work-life balance, you passively began to take on the platform that was already based in Denmark and the Danish culture when it came to work. Hmm. Which no, sounds absolutely
exactly.
amazing because I think the
Yeah,
the issue when it comes
yeah,
to the UK, as we already stated before, is that consistent hustle, 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 and always must be trying to climb up the ladder, always trying to be better than others. So it's the comparison with others, right? And if you got a whole room of people working until late, you're gonna try and join in too, because if you don't do it, you're gonna feel like you're the one that is, I wouldn't say missing out, but you're the one that's not pulling their weight.
exactly. And personally, for me, another thing that's changed is in sales sometimes it can be very cutthroat, right? And you're always kind of comparing yourself to your peers and colleagues, either indirectly or directly, in a way, saying,
Mm,
I really need to beat this guy, or I need to be the highest top performer in the company. Nowadays, I kind of look at it in a different way. I kind of like, yes, I
mm,
want to be one of the top performers there as well,
mm,
but just by focusing on that mission and that mission and goal, I'm
mm.
kind of losing um, kind of what's important to me outside of work, right? And
Exactly.
it's building those and developing those relationships with friends and family, and um,
Mm,
now that I've started dating again, building a new relationship with someone, but also me as well, being able to develop my own personal hobbies and interests,
yes,
which one of these
important.
is recording the podcast as well. So I think it's very important to kind of have that shift in mentality and mindset.
Agreed. Agreed. And I'm happy that it's moved forward in
But
such a way and you're able to reflect
I
as
think the
well.
audience have yeah. But I think the audience has heard enough about my babbling. Let's go to your kind of stories and stuff and your personal experiences.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to work-life balance, it's been a journey because ultimately, just like with everyone, you have certain points that you do reflect on and you realize, oh, you know what, I could have done this differently, or if it allowed me to do it differently, yeah, great. But I think there's also times where you look at, just like how you've seen a different culture in Denmark. For me, seeing a different culture in Uganda, for
Mm.
example, I think it's just looking at the way how the rest of your individuals or the rest of the people that are within your workplace do things differently. So let's go back to my time with the academic institute. Now, in academia, I won't say you work hard, but I guess my
Mm.
fatal flaw is, well, my main fatal flaw back then, oh, you know what? I have to be good enough. And the way to be good enough is to do the extra bits of work. So whether that would be spending the extra time in the lab,
Mm.
running about 10 different experiments at the same time, just to make sure I can churn out a massive amount of data, then to analyze all that data just to say, you know
Yeah.
what, I can do this. Yeah, again, it's all up in here. It's all within my own brain, right? So UK way of working. Then
Mm.
when I went over to Uganda to actually see their way of working, 5 o'clock on the dot, gone. Everyone's gone because the work is all sorted out. There's no extra stuff that needs to be done.
Mm.
And I remember that. I remember
Wow.
on top of it just being such a
Yeah.
lovely country, and on top of just the nourishing land in terms of just the amazing environment, such a completely different way of working in at 9:30, leave at 5. And most of the time what would happen is people will start moving around about 4:30, 5 o'clock, and then it's, you know what, it's time to go. But from that, I really, really understood that the mantra elsewhere out of Western society, or out of corporate society, or out of, being in a major city, the pace is slower. And with the pace being slower, you're allowed to actually think and be present in the moment and focus on things such as, let's say, your kids. I don't have kids, but your kids, your family, your friends, and actually have a life outside of work, which I think is important. So going from that perspective, let's focus a bit more on that fatal flaw that I used to have, not thinking that was good enough. So I'm sure I touched on this with the original work-life balance episode, where when I started at this workplace, or my new workplace, my industrial scientist workplace, I would go above and beyond. I'll get in early, and I'll be working up until, let's say, 6, 7 o'clock. So, okay, not too late. But whenever there would be an opportunity to do extra work, oh, Leon, do you think you can stay until midnight to get this experimental run finished? Yeah, of course, that can't be a problem. So going with that idea of not being good enough, and then not being able to put that boundary to say no to certain things that I know is going to, let's say, ruin that sleep or stop me from maintaining my energy. We have an episode back in the earlier Refining the Connection series on literally making sure you maintain your energy. I would lead closer to burnout by just not being able to put in that boundary of saying, no, you know what, that's not actually within my bandwidth. I can't do this. It's not actually possible. Now, it's all good being positive and saying, you know what, I can do this and that. I can be a team player. I can sacrifice myself and make sure that I achieve everything that I put my mind to. But then there's also has to be a sense of realism, right? You can't do midnight finishes 5 days in a week and then expect your weekend to be restful, because the balance is completely off. You haven't had that time to sit back, to reset yourself. And even my line manager and most of my colleagues love them to bits, my line manager actually put in my end of year review, I want you to say no to more things. Now, I wouldn't say because I was just accepting everything, but he was like, I want you to say no to more things. Yes, we know that you can do the job, but focus on the stuff that we actually need you to do and just do it well. Like, yes, I'm doing things well, but you can do, if you put all your energy more to the things that need to reach the goal, then yeah, you will have that work-life balance. And I think that is so important moving forward. So that was a good bit of advice from him, just making sure that you focus on the right things and communicate when you know things are too much. Something that I'm not the greatest at, I'll be completely honest. So yeah, I think in terms of work-life balance, those are the things that I personally struggle with and I've had to learn going forwards, But in terms of me booking in that time...
It's interesting.
Yeah, go. Jump in, man.
It's kind of interesting, to hear about your experience working in your current company and when you first started out. Did you also think that there was this concept of imposter syndrome coming into play? Like, you're new to the company, you're the young gun, fresh blood, you need to prove yourself, to others and higher up. Like, I'm the right fit for this job. I'm definitely the right hire. So do you think there's a bit of imposter syndrome coming into play? Like, am I going to be a success here?
Yeah, completely agree. So with that, which yet again, we'll do another episode on that because we don't have a video on that basis. And there's so much that has been learned over the space of a year. Trying to prove myself led to me doing more work. But then by doing more work on a constant basis, it meant that the weekend then kind of shrunk, and that time to re-energize myself during the week didn't happen. I stopped going to the gym as often. Actually, I think I stopped completely, and that plagued the mental health aspect. So taking all those into consideration, when it came to the start of this year, I said to myself, you know what? this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pre-plan all my holidays for the year. I'm going to sit down with my partner, Gabs, plan all the holidays for the year and strategically book it. And the months that I don't have holiday, I'm going to put in some me time for myself. Book this Friday off so I can go and get a massage. And then what I've made sure as well, when it hits 6 o'clock, the work stops. Unless it's something that is completely necessary, I will do it, but then talk to my line manager and say, look, I'm going to take this time as time in lieu because I did all this work over here. So it's no longer having to prove myself to who, and at the end of the day, if I was not good enough for the job, now I know I've been there for a year, so I know what's what. If you weren't good enough for the job, you wouldn't get through 3 rounds of interviews and they wouldn't offer you a contract. You know? Now, I know obviously when it comes to your basis and what has happened to you before, yes, okay, fair enough, things may not work out, but you don't pass probation if you're not good enough at the end of the day. So there's no need to overwork to the point where you're trying to prove yourself to your employer, because at the end of the day, you are replaceable. So going back to that, it's making sure you have the practices in place to prevent yourself from burning out. It's also having that internal dialogue with your mind and making sure that you have those specific times booked in every week or every day or every year where you can at least sit back, reflect, and do something you enjoy or spend that time with those loved ones. Because at the end of the day, this life is finite from what we know of, and you don't get that time back. Time is the most valuable resource over money, and money is replenishable. So yeah, that's in terms of my experience. Those are
totally
that's what I can draw from, and I think it's valuable for our audience and listeners to literally have a look at that. So yeah, enough of me wrapping up, because I know I can talk about this for ages, but maybe we will have to do a Q&A session, a live one, when it comes to this topic. I know there's definitely plenty of people who have questions when it comes to this. That's not me foreboding, by the way. But yes, so
don't worry, I mean, we could do like a tour, basically, the Purpose Hangtime tour.
Yeah,
going around.
And I think it definitely would be beneficial for our audience, especially looking at demographics and who listens to our content. What is required when it comes to work-life, and how do you keep it balanced? And on that topic, the next part, because obviously true Purpose Hangtime fashion, we talked about the work-life balance, what it is, how do you avoid burnout, our experiences, but what can you put in place to maintain a healthy work-life balance? So constantly sharpening your skills and knowledge. Skills decrease stress. So Rix, as you were talking about earlier on, anxiety generally is heightened when you don't know how to do something, or if it's not practiced enough in the workplace. So one way to decrease that stress is to focus on the things that matter. And yeah, again, that's also relaying back to me and my experience, right? Focus on the things that matter. When you reduce your weaknesses in the workplace, or you give yourselves those extra tools in the toolkit to do your job properly, it means that you reduce that stress and anxiety, especially when it comes to that deadline, that goal, or that target. So identifying those skills and making sure that that saw has been sharpened will allow you to move forward when it comes to the personal growth. And also talk to your line manager, because they are there and in place to allow you to grow. Book in a one-to-one and make sure you can move forward within your workplace, and you just have that sense of communication with someone who you are working with. Also, actively deciding what your work practices are. So autonomy versus flexibility. In everyone's contract, it will state how much flexibility you can have when it comes to whether you want to work from home or whether you should be working in the office, or in my case, the lab. But remember, that's just, don't just stick to, okay, I'm only going to take time. Well, I'm only going to be working from home on a Friday. See how it works for you. So actively seek out on a weekly basis, how would me having this or having autonomy, how will it work for me? Let me go and have that discussion, be fully involved in talking with a manager or a line manager or your colleagues. How can this benefit the team? If I work from home on this day, does it make my life easier because I need to work on a presentation in my own space? without having to deal with a long, lengthy commute. Everyone knows what the London
Exactly.
TfL commute is like. Does that reduce my
Mm.
anxiety, and does that give me more time to do what I need to do? I know you don't have to deal with that in Denmark anymore. We do the
I do.
lovely transport
I
over
don't have that experience here. No,
there.
no, no.
But you know,
Another reason why I moved here.
it
Yeah.
is what it is, and it depends on where you are in London too. So yeah, number three,
Mm.
when it comes to maintaining that work-life balance, spending time with family and friends. As stated earlier before, your friends and family, loved ones are important, and they do not want to see you stressed. They like to spend time with you. Yes, work is also important, but we shouldn't sacrifice that time so that we don't, like, we need to make sure we spend that time with our family and friends. It's so important because at the end of the day, that is what lifts you up. That's what gives you the positivity. It's more people and more individuals to talk to who I would like to say care. So that's what's
Mm.
important. Number four, developing and acquiring personal interests and hobbies.
Mm.
So important. What do you enjoy doing? If you sit there and write a list, what comes up? Do you like playing video games when you come in from work? Do you enjoy reading a book in silence or in bed? Do you like to go and play hockey? Like, there's so
Mm.
many hobbies and interests out there, but everyone is unique and everyone has certain things that they specifically enjoy. So if you can find that and you know that that is what gives you a sense of purpose and
Mm.
release from your day job, perfect. That's what you need to do. Number five, exercise. Now, funnily enough, we put at my workplace, we put an active poll to all of our colleagues. And the main thing that popped up, the most common word, was exercise. So there's a lot of people who exercise out there. Now that doesn't have to be specific to the gym. That's my form of exercise. I don't know, Rix, you have your own way as well. You got your cycling
Mm.
for your commute, but exercise is so important for the mind. Get those endorphins
Yeah.
going, get the adrenaline running, get the serotonin going. Knowing that you can achieve stuff in the gym means you can achieve stuff at
Oh yeah.
work at your optimal point. Number six, regular breaks. Work in
Oh
short
yeah.
bursts. We know that when it comes to focus, no one can focus for any longer than, I don't know specifically with this technique, but from what we were told back in school, no longer than 50 minutes or 20 minutes. So with that being the case, don't try to work in massive, massive long
Mm.
stretches. Focus on a task for 20 to 50 minutes, go out for a walk, come back, and then jump back to it. Or focus on something else that gives you something a bit more refreshing for the palate. So important. Number seven, practice
Yeah.
sensory
Absolutely.
deprivation. Removing yourself from stimulation and sensory overload. So it's very similar to what we just said here, but let's move this to after you finished work. Having a bath, meditation, sitting in a quiet room. I know it's not possible for all of us because everyone's got a different way of living. Some have children, some live with housemates. There's so many different variables that can lead to something, but try and have a break from the sensory overload. It could even be putting in earbuds with noise cancelling on a train. That is reducing your sensory overload right there. So
Yeah.
doing
I
that.
mean,
Got me.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Personally, for me, the way I like to do it is I have a lovely big bathtub in my apartment in Copenhagen, and it's
Mm.
considered quite a rarity over here.
Mhm.
You know, people that are listening to the Purpose Hangtime that live in Copenhagen.
Mm.
When we talk about Copenhagen showers, you know what I mean. But yeah, I like to just kind of unwind by, and I'm not ashamed to admit this, you know, throwing a bath bomb into the bathtub, you know, filling up with water and just laying there
Mm.
in complete silence, quiet, all by myself, and that really, really helps
It's a good way of doing
just
it. Mm.
remove stimulation.
Yeah, or even it could be down to something like a massage, like I did yesterday. And I'm gonna definitely hold you to that bath idea because after myself and Gabs, we have something to eat. That's literally before I go to sleep. Is going to be a long bath, hot what? See, half an hour to an hour bath. That sounds good to me. But yeah,
Yeah,
number eight. I pointed
yeah.
this out with my personal experience, but create tangible barriers. Learn to say no at work for things that you don't particularly need
Mm,
to do, or if you know that the bandwidth is there for someone else to do it. have a Teams meeting, have a call with your line manager, just literally discussing and stating, you know what, I can't do this at this particular moment, but if someone else can, great. What is the priority in terms of the list of things to do? What is the priority? Which is important. Number 9, time boxing. Yeah. Putting all your tasks into a calendar and give the task a set amount of time in the future. So, fun enough, I do this already with, how I spend my free time and how I just enjoy just relaxing. But also, if you take all the stuff out of your head and place it onto a piece of paper or into an actual calendar-based app, it's no longer in your brain. So it's not taking up that extra space where your energy can be used for something else. That means you're using less energy. And you know what that means? It means that you then are practicing more mindfulness. And it's very important that if you can put it all in something else, why not? There are so many tools out there that can be utilized to make sure that we can maintain a good, healthy work-life balance. And then the final point, which is point number 10, focus on the relationships at work as much as you focus on work. Don't be neglectful of the people at work as the trust and relationships with them build. So just like how I got a very great relationship with my line manager and my colleagues, myself and my line manager, we talk about Final Fantasy 7 in our one-to-ones. We'll talk about work and then it will kind of slide towards something that we're both interested in. But it's having those relationships with the people that you are working with, which means when it does come to those hard times, you can talk to them or they will be receptive to you being stressed. And I think that is such an important thing when it comes to your line of work. To being open, it all goes back to everything that we have spoken about in earlier episodes of the Purpose Hangtime, such as accountability, communication, everything, because it's all overlapping. But having that conversation with your work colleagues, line managers, anyone that's around you that you get on with is so important. So from that, I know everyone's heard my voice for a long time, but we still got a few more things just to point out when it comes to work-life balance. And it's just talking about the resources and the professional help that you can get or advice, which I think is so important when it comes to this episode. So Mind as an actual charity company, the website, we'll put in the link. Very, very good because it has advice when it comes to work-life balance. Shout, Samaritans, Campaign Against Miserable Living, which is also known as Calm. Probably said it the wrong way around. But yep, and suicide prevention. If you are feeling that the work-life balance is getting too much, you feel that anxiety, you feel that constant pressure in your head, please reach for help. If you feel that you can't get it from your work colleagues, locate these specific companies that we're going to have in our description at the bottom of our videos and in our Spotify as well, and reach out. Reach out if you feel that you can't cope. It's so important, especially in this day and age. And in terms of the actual resources, you have Mindler, you have Headspace. Mindler is an online therapy / a self-help app. Therapy is also, or counseling is also something you can reach out to as well to help realign you when it comes to your work-life balance. And Headspace, sleep and meditation is important when it comes to just keeping that balance. Having a good night's sleep can set you up for an amazing day going forwards. So those will be in the description below. And as I said, audience, make sure you give these a look and listen. So we've reached the end in terms of that, but obviously True Purpose Hangtime Fashion, we have a quote which is based on work-life balance. Rix, take it away.
Yeah, this is a beautiful quote by one of the most famous men ever to have existed, the great Albert Einstein. And to quote, he said, "Strive not to be a success, but rather to be of value." And what he really meant by that is really emphasizing the importance of focusing on the contributions we make to the world and those around us, rather than just solely focusing on personal achievements at work.
Very important. Because in this life, you want to lead a purposeful life. Work is not 100% your life. So yeah, so there we have it, ladies and gents. Thanks, Rick, for that quote. very powerful as per usual. And yeah, we have come to the end of another episode on the Purpose Hangtime podcast, Work-Life Balance. If you do want to revisit our old episode, it is linked in the description below. But here we actually have video linked to this, and it was such a great way of reflecting over what's been going on over a whole year in terms of work-life balance. So in true Purpose Hangtime fashion, keep shooting that breeze. Thank you very much, listeners. Take care.